Part 1. You will hear a dialogue between a customer and a travel agent as they go over flight availability, ticket prices, and booking policies. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5.
Mark, travel agent. How can I assist you today?
I'm looking to book a flight, but I have a few questions about schedules, prices, and baggage policies. Could you help me with that?
Absolutely, I'll be happy to assist you. Could you let me know the destination and travel dates you have in mind?
Sure. I'm planning to fly from New York to Paris. I'd like to depart on the 15th of November and return on the 23rd. What flights are available on those dates?
Let me check the system for you. All right, I have several options. On the 15th, we have a flight at 8 a.m. and another one at 5:30 p.m. Both are nonstop flights. For the return on the 23rd, we have a flight at 6 p.m.
I'd prefer the morning flights for both the departure and return. What are the prices for those?
For the 8 a.m. flight on the 15th, the price is $720 for economy class and $1,200 for business class. For the return flight at 11:45 a.m. on the 23rd, it's $650 for economy and $1,100 for business.
That seems reasonable. I'll book the economy class for both flights.
Okay. Now let me take your personal details for the booking. Could you provide your full name as it appears on your passport?
Sure, it's Emily Walters.
Just to confirm, that's EMILYWALTERS, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Great. And could I have your contact number and email address for booking confirmation?
My phone number is 212-555-7896.
Let me double check. That's 212-555-7096.
Yes, that's right. And my email is emily.w@gmail.com.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answers questions 6 to 10.
Perfect. Now, let's talk about baggage. Do you know how much luggage you'll be taking with you?
I'm not entirely sure. Could you explain the luggage policy?
Certainly. For economy class, you're allowed one checked bag weighing up to 23 kilograms and one carry-on item that can weigh up to 7 kilograms. If you need extra baggage, you can purchase an additional allowance. Each extra bag up to 23 kilograms costs $80.
I think one checked bag should be fine for now. But just in case, how close to the departure date can I add more baggage?
You can purchase additional baggage up to 24 hours before your flight, either online or at the airport. Just keep in mind that it's usually cheaper to add it online.
That's good to know. And what about hand luggage? What are the size restrictions?
For your carry-on, the dimensions shouldn't exceed 55 centimeters by 35 centimeters by 25 centimeters. As long as it fits within that size and stays under 7 kilograms, you'll be fine.
Perfect. And what about meals on the flight? Are they included?
Yes, meals are included for all long-haul flights, including yours. If you have any dietary requirements, you can let us know, and we'll make sure to arrange it.
That's great. I don't have any specific dietary restrictions, but could you confirm if they serve vegetarian meals?
Yes, they do. Vegetarian meals are one of the standard options, so you don't need to make a special request unless you have other dietary needs.
That's good to hear. I'll stick with the regular meal options. Now, I think I have everything sorted out. Could you confirm the total price for the flights?
Certainly. Since you're booking economy class for both flights, the total price will be $1,370. This includes taxes and fees.
That works for me. How do I proceed with the payment?
We accept all major credit cards and online payment methods. Would you like to pay now or later?
I'll pay now with my credit card. Could you charge it to my Visa?
Of course. Could you provide the card number and expiration date, please?
Sure. The card number is 4111-5678-123-4-5678, and it expires in December 2025.
Thank you. The payment has been processed, and I've sent the confirmation to your email. Is there anything else you'd like to add or change?
No, I think that's everything for now. Just to confirm, I've got the 8 a.m. flight.
That is the end of Part 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers to Part 1. Part 2. You will hear a public announcement about updates to the city's public transport system, including new routes and fare changes. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now, listen and answer questions 11 to 14. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this important announcement regarding the latest updates to our public transport system. Whether you're a regular commuter or just an occasional user, there are several changes that you need to be aware of, particularly with the new bus routes and fare system that have been implemented. Starting with our bus route adjustments, one significant update is the addition of Route 9, which has been created to better connect the northern and southern regions of the city. This new route effectively replaces the previous Route 5, which many regular passengers relied on for their daily commutes. Route 9 does cover a large portion of the same area as Route 5, but with some notable differences. Unlike Route 5, Route 9 includes a stop at Market Square, a destination that previously wasn't available on the old route. However, be aware that Route 9 will no longer service the Green Park area at all. For those of you heading to Green Park, you'll need to switch to Route 12, which now serves that neighborhood specifically. It's essential to review the revised schedules to understand how these route changes might impact your travel routine, especially if your journey included stops on the old Route 5. A significant update to Route 14 involves changes to its operating hours. Previously, Route 14 only ran along the main highway during peak times, catering to early morning and late evening commuters. However, due to numerous requests to ease congestion, we've expanded the schedule, and now Route 14 will run continuously throughout the day. For those who regularly use this route, there are new times to note. The first bus will now depart slightly earlier at 5:45 a.m., a shift from its former 6 a.m. start, which may be an unexpected adjustment for some. Additionally, evening service will finish earlier than before, with the last bus leaving the terminal at 9:15 p.m. rather than the previous 9:30 p.m. This alteration might require some travelers to adjust their return schedules. Furthermore, while midday service is now available, the frequency of buses might vary slightly based on demand during non-peak hours, so it's recommended to consult the schedule in advance. Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answers questions 15 to 20. Now, let's talk about the new fare system. We've introduced a new card-based payment option called the FlexiCard. This card is aimed at making the payment process quicker and easier for all commuters. You can purchase a FlexiCard at any station or online, and you can top it up at various points around the city. While cash payments are still accepted, we strongly encourage everyone to switch to the FlexiCard for convenience. Keep in mind, though, that cash fares will be slightly higher than FlexiCard fares, starting next month. The price difference isn't too large, just 10% more for cash payments, but over time, the savings can add up if you use the FlexiCard. Speaking of trains, let's move on to the rail services. As part of our improvements, we've streamlined the timetable for train services to reduce wait times. The express trains between Central Station and the airport will now run every 20 minutes, as opposed to every 30 minutes. This is great news for frequent flyers and business travelers, but note that the regular trains on this line will now run less frequently, at intervals of 40 minutes instead of 30. So, if you're catching a regular train, be sure to check the new schedule to avoid any delays in your journey. Peak travel times have also been adjusted slightly. Traditionally, peak hours were from 7 to 9 a.m. and from 5 to 7 p.m. However, based on recent travel data, we've extended the morning peak by 30 minutes, so it now runs from 6:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. This change is aimed at better accommodating early commuters, especially those using Route 14. As for the evening rush hour, it will now start a little later, from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. This means that fares will be higher during these times, so if you can travel outside of peak hours, you might want to adjust your schedule to save on costs. We've also made some adjustments to weekend services. Previously, buses and trains operated on reduced schedules on Saturdays and Sundays. But now, based on demand, we've increased the number of services on Saturdays to align more closely with weekday operations. On Sundays, however, the schedule remains largely unchanged, with fewer buses and trains running throughout the day. But keep an eye on special event days, as services may be increased to accommodate large crowds. Lastly, we want to remind everyone about the importance of checking the new timetables. You can find them on our website or pick up a printed version at any station. The timetables will reflect all the changes we've discussed today, and we strongly advise all passengers to review them, especially if your commute involves multiple connections or transfers. We understand that these changes may take a little time to get used to, but we believe they will ultimately improve your commuting experience. The new routes, fare options, and extended services are designed with you in mind, and we're excited to roll them out. Should you have any questions or need further clarification? That is the end of Part 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers to Part 2. Part 3. You will hear a conversation between a tutor and a student discussing feedback on an essay. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now, listen and answer the questions 21 to 24.
Okay, Emma, let's go over your essay together. You've done a solid job with your research, and your writing has definitely improved since your last assignment. However, I want to point out a few areas where we could make your argument even stronger.
Sure, that sounds great. I'm really aiming to get a higher grade this time, so any advice you have is welcome.
That's the right approach, Emma. Now let's dive into your introduction. You've included some interesting ideas, which is excellent, but the thesis statement could use refinement. At the moment, it seems a bit too general, which could make it difficult for readers to immediately grasp your central argument. A well-crafted thesis statement should clearly outline your main argument in a precise way, ideally within a sentence or two. Think of it as the guiding line that introduces what the rest of the essay will expand upon. If it's too vague or broad, readers might struggle to understand the direction of your argument from the start, which could impact their overall impression of your essay.
Got it. I'll work on that. I guess I was trying to cover too much at once.
It's common for students to want to include everything they know, but sometimes less is more. Now, moving on to your body paragraphs, you've got some great ideas, but I noticed that your points could be a bit more organized. For example, you start one paragraph discussing historical context, then suddenly switch to current impacts without a clear link. It might help to use topic sentences to introduce each paragraph's main idea and keep it focused on that. This will make your argument flow more naturally.
So, do you mean I should reorganize the points or just add clearer topic sentences?
A little of both, actually. Think of each paragraph as a building block that supports your thesis. Start with a strong topic sentence, then back it up with evidence and examples that relate directly to that point. And make sure each paragraph connects to the next, guiding the reader through your argument logically.
That makes sense. I think I was trying to add too much detail in some places without really tying it all together.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer the questions 25 to 30.
Exactly. Detail is great, but it has to support your main argument. Speaking of details, your evidence is well researched, but in some places, you might want to consider integrating the sources a bit more naturally. For example, you mentioned several studies, but they're somewhat scattered. Try to connect these references directly to your argument instead of listing them. This approach makes the essay stronger and more cohesive.
So, I should work on blending the sources into the argument better?
Yes, precisely. Instead of saying, study A found this and study B found that, try linking them to show how they support your point or even contrast with each other. It'll make the essay read more smoothly. Now, moving to your conclusion, you summarize your main points well, but it would be more effective if you also included a final thought that leaves an impression. Perhaps a broader implication or a call to consider future research.
I thought summarizing was enough, but I see how adding something thought-provoking could strengthen it. I guess I was just trying to wrap things up quickly.
That's understandable, but conclusions are where you can reinforce your thesis one last time and leave the reader with something memorable. It doesn't need to be lengthy, just one or two sentences that tie everything back to your main idea and hint at why it matters.
Right, I'll add that in. Thanks for pointing that out.
Many students feel the same way, but a well-rounded conclusion can leave a strong impression. Also, while we're on the topic, I noticed a few grammatical errors. They're not major, but things like subject-verb agreement and comma usage are important.
Oh, really? I thought I caught all of them. I'll go over it again with a closer eye on the grammar.
Good plan. Maybe try reading it aloud or using a grammar checking tool to catch those minor issues. Lastly, I wanted to touch on your use of transitional phrases. While they're good for linking ideas, you sometimes overuse them, which can make the essay feel repetitive. Try varying your transitions a bit to maintain a smoother flow.
I didn't realize I was doing that. I'll switch it up so it doesn't sound so repetitive.
That'll help the essay sound more natural. Overall, you've done really well, and I can see the hard work you've put into it. If you make these adjustments, I'm sure your essay will improve even more. And remember, with practice, structuring your essays and integrating sources will become second nature.
Thanks so much. This feedback really helps. I'll work on these changes and focus on making my thesis more precise, organizing my points clearly, and improving my conclusion.
You're on the right track, Emma. With these improvements, you'll be able to present your ideas more effectively, and your arguments will come across as stronger and more convincing. Just remember to keep things focused on your main point, and don't be afraid to cut out any parts that don't directly support your thesis. Absolutely. The goal isn't to cover every possible angle, but to build a strong, cohesive argument that sticks with the reader. You're making excellent progress, and I'm looking forward to seeing your final draft.
That is the end of Part 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers to Part 3. Part 4. You will hear a lecture on sustainable farming practices and their significance in today's agriculture. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 31 to 40.
Sustainable farming is a way of growing food that aims to balance agricultural production with environmental health. It focuses on reducing harm to the soil, conserving water, and minimizing pollution. In recent years, as the global population has grown, the need for sustainable farming has become more apparent. But before diving into today's practices, let's take a quick look at how farming methods have changed over time. Historically, traditional farming was simpler and more connected to nature. Early farmers relied on natural rainfall to grow their crops. They didn't use artificial chemicals or heavy machinery. Instead, they worked closely with the land, knowing that healthy soil meant better food production. This method of farming lasted for thousands of years, but as civilizations advanced, so did farming techniques. In the 20th century, the agricultural industry saw massive changes. The invention of chemical fertilizers and pesticides allowed for quicker and larger harvests. But these chemicals also began to cause environmental issues, such as pollution and soil degradation. This led people to question whether modern practices were as beneficial as they seemed. In response, sustainable farming practices started to emerge in the late 20th century. One of the first practices to gain attention was crop rotation. This method involves planting different crops in a particular order to maintain soil health. For example, a farmer might plant corn one year and soybeans the next. This prevents the soil from losing all its nutrients and reduces the need for chemical fertilizers. Crop rotation has proven effective in controlling pests as well, since different plants attract different types of insects. Another key practice in sustainable farming is the use of cover crops. These are plants, such as clover or rye, which are grown mainly to cover the soil rather than for harvesting. Cover crops help prevent soil erosion, retain moisture, and add essential nutrients back into the ground. They act as a natural barrier, protecting soil from harsh weather and reducing the need for artificial fertilizers. Moving forward, integrated pest management, or IPM, has also become popular in sustainable farming. Instead of relying on heavy pesticides, farmers monitor pest levels and use natural solutions wherever possible. For instance, some farmers introduce insects like ladybugs to their fields, which eat harmful pests without causing damage to crops. If pests become overwhelming, they may use pesticides, but in smaller quantities and only when absolutely necessary. A more recent approach, often seen in organic farming, is composting. This process involves collecting organic waste, such as vegetable peels, plant clippings, or even animal manure, and allowing it to break down naturally. The compost created can be spread over fields, enriching the soil without the need for chemical fertilizers. Not only does this save money, but it also reduces landfill waste, turning food scraps into valuable resources. Beyond these methods, water conservation is another critical part of sustainable farming. As climate change impacts rainfall patterns, conserving water has become more urgent. This method reduces water waste and keeps plants hydrated, especially during dry seasons. One popular technique is drip irrigation, which delivers water directly to the roots of plants through a system of tubes and emitters. Farmers in drought-prone areas, such as parts of Australia and California, are adopting this technique widely to save precious resources. The benefits of sustainable farming extend beyond the environment. Studies show that these methods can improve food quality, increase biodiversity, and even support local economies. For instance, sustainable farms are often smaller, locally owned operations that provide fresh produce to nearby communities. This reduces the need for long-distance transportation and, in turn, lowers greenhouse gas emissions. Moreover, sustainable farming often results in healthier, tastier food. Without heavy chemicals, crops grow more naturally, absorbing nutrients from the soil. Research has shown that organic foods, often produced using sustainable methods, tend to have higher levels of vitamins and minerals. Consumers increasingly appreciate this, and many are willing to pay a bit more for food they know is grown sustainably. Lastly, sustainable farming plays a crucial role in preserving biodiversity. When large-scale industrial farms grow only one type of crop, it can create what's known as a monoculture. This decreases the variety of plant and animal species in the area, weakening the ecosystem. Sustainable farms, by contrast, often grow a range of plants and avoid harmful pesticides. which means wildlife, such as bees and butterflies, can thrive. In the long run, this supports a balanced environment, essential for the health of our planet. In summary, sustainable farming may require more time, patience, and skill, but the benefits are clear. By focusing on long-term health rather than quick profits, it contributes to a cleaner environment, better food, and a healthier future.
That is the end of Part 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers to Part 4.